So hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of backend development with Python and MySQL. This is week 8 and this week we're going to introduce Python. We're going to look at the syntax and what variables are in Python. My name is Mildred. Before you start, you should install Python. It is recommended that you install the latest version of Python. You can install that by going to python.org and then you will find the latest version, go to downloads, and the latest version of Python for your operating system. You want to download and install this first. Once that is done, we also want to install Visual Studio Code. The first choice of IDE for the course is Visual Studio Code, but you can use any IDE of your choice. You can use PyCharm, anyone you feel comfortable with, but you will hardly get support if you are not using Visual Studio Code. So you go to code.visualstudio.com and then you download for your operating system. So once you have these two downloaded, you are ready to start working. You start up Visual Studio Code. For Visual Studio Code, we have something we call a terminal. You can go to terminal and new terminal to always select the terminal you want for your project. Now, if you watch the pre-recorded video, lesson 1, you will find details about this. So we'll just go on to start using this. When you see files, documents, we always have something we call an extension. If you have a PDF file, you will see .pdf, or an Office file, you will see .docs, docx. When you have a Python file, the file extension is .py. If you don't have the .py extension, it is not a Python file, and the interpreter is not going to run that as a Python file. So take note, when you write a Python file, the extension is .py. Now there are various ways we can use Python, but we'll go straight to the point here and we'll do what it is that you will do in the software development mode. You can research to find how you can type Python from the shell. You can do Python 3 to give you a shell to start writing Python code, and then you do exit to come out of that shell if you want to just test a line of code. We can also use Jupyter Notebook instead. I might use Jupyter Notebook for some of the classes so that you can see a variety of ways to test your code. But when you are doing your backend development, you will need an IDE like Visual Studio Code to write all your code and to debug and to run your code. Once you've done your installation of Python, you want to see what version of Python you have, or before installation you are not sure, you want to type Python. You come to your terminal here and you type Python 3.2 version. You'll see the version of Python you have here. If you don't find anything there, it means you've not installed Python. You need to install Python. Now from Python 3.8 and above, pip, which is a package manager for Python, comes installed by default. And if you want to see if you have pip installed or the version of pip you have, you can type pip version. If that doesn't work, you do pip 3 version. So we see that it is installed and we see the install location. So we are all set to start using Python. If you have a script, let's say you're just working with scripts for data analysis and you want to run a script against a file to be able to do something, you want to type in the terminal Python 3 and then the name or the directory of the script that you are going to run. So let's say we have this intro.py, for instance. Let me say print hello world, and I save this. Now this is saved on my desktop. I have a folder, live classes, and I have this, and it's saved here. If I want to run this, for instance, from the terminal, I can just come here, say Python 3, go to the directory. It's on my desktop. It's in the live classes. I'm already in that place, and I want to get to I can just change directory there, change directory, and I'll do O224C, and I'm in that directory. I can see the file here. I can now say Python 3 and I'll run the file intro.py, and it should print hello world for me here. So you can run a script. So this is one way we run scripts. When you have a script on your system or in any directory and you want to run that script to test, you can run it by typing Python 3 and then the name of that file, and make sure you navigate to that directory or you specify the directory address and it's printed out there. Another way we can do this is to just click the run button here and it prints hello world here. So we say there are different ways we can use Python. If name equal to main, print this. Now this is something you're going to learn shortly, but what it's just saying is that whenever the script is run, we want to do something. Whatever you want to do will be here. It runs the script. I'm going to explain this in details by the time you get to part 3 of the course. When we do this and this is run, we'll have a hello world printed. So this is just a summary. So we're going to use this to test our code. Before we get to this part, so you don't get confused, let us now start from the beginning. Python files have the extension .py. Whenever we create a file, we have to have the extension .py to be a Python script. Sorry, hold on. Okay, so we write Python. For those of you who have done course 1 and you've done JavaScript, it will be a little confusing. When we see JavaScript, we terminate a line with a semicolon. Python follows closely with an English syntax. And I'll tell you that Python is the easiest language that you can learn, but you can take years and years trying to master Python. It requires a lot of logical reasoning for you to be able to do something useful out of Python. We can use Python in several ways, either in a procedural way, we can use it in a structural way, and an object-oriented way. And we're going to use it in all of these ways in this course. When we write a Python code, its statement ends by starting a new line, and it relies on indentation. And when we say indentation, it's like spaces before.
No sound again. Is it from my end? No.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know they went off. Okay. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right. So I was saying that Python relies on indentation, and indentation is like the spaces you have before your code. Like when you start the paragraph, you have spaces. The number of spaces that we have does not matter, but by standard, people have 4 spaces like what the tab is, but it must be uniform in one block of code. When we say block, is a unit of code that works together to do the same thing. Now, how do we write Python code? We write every Python code and start a new line for every new code or every new line of code. Once we end the line of code, the code is ended. So let's say, for instance, we want to have a variable. We'll discuss what the variable is shortly. Let's say x is equal to 1, we'll say y is equal to 2. Now, let's write a Python statement and say if, let's say if x is greater than y, print x is greater than y, else we want to print x is less than or equal to y. Now, you see, after this if statement, because this statement continues, we indent here. The space we leave before this is the indentation. It just relies on this indentation. Without this, it's going to be wrong. When you're using Visual Studio Code, it is very easy for you to know when you are wrong, because it will leave this red wriggling line for you to see that there's something wrong here. Expected indented block. It makes it easier for you. And once it's indented, that line is not there. It means there's no syntax error. If you go ahead with that wriggly line and run this file, you are going to get an indentation error here and expected an indented block after if statement. Later down the line, we are going to look at error handling, and then you will understand the different types of errors and why and how they occur. Okay, so that is the syntax. It relies on indentation and it starts with a new line. Every new statement starts with a new line. Does everybody understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So when we say a block of code, what we mean by a block of code is, if I write, it will be better described with a function, but when I write this is one block of code. It's like a unit that functions together. So if I do my indentation with 4 there, I don't want to do, okay, with 2 like this, and let's say I want to print something else, and I start here. For instance, within this block, I want to print something else, and I say print. So let's just try this. Now, this if statement is one block of code like this, and I indented 4 spaces the first time and 8 spaces the second time. It's not going to work that way. If you are using 4, it has to be 4. If you're using 8, it all has to be 8. So the number of spaces before must be uniform within a block of code. So you can make it different like this. Okay, so this is an example of indentation. Now let's say I'm just trying this out. I have not taught you what conditional statements are, what variables are, and we want to go back to teaching you that. I don't want to delete this because I want to use it shortly. There is something we call comment that we use. When you want to leave a block of code out of execution, or you just want to leave a note like I did here, and you don't want the interpreter to see this as part of the code to run, you can write a single line comment using the number sign, the hash sign in front of the statement, and it's going to read everything there to the end of that line has the comment, and it's not going to be interpreting this as a Python code. You want to write multi-line code, comments and leave, we can put 3 quotation marks, either single or double quotes, and it will end where it sees another 3 quotation marks. This is going to be exempted for execution, and when I click run, there is nothing to run on this file anymore because all of them are comments that are written. So we can write our comments either with a hash sign. So for instance, when I say something like x is equal to 2, and I want to just write a note behind it, I want to say this is an integer. So I just want to leave a note beside whatever I'm doing. this is what I'll do. I want to leave a note for other developers if I'm working in a team, this is what I'll do. If that note I'm writing spans multiple lines, I don't want to keep using hash everywhere. I can just use single or double quotes where it starts and where it ends. So these are ways we can write comments in Python. So comments are very important. We expect you to comment your code, the idea behind what you are doing. When you write a function or anything, the definition and why you are doing it the way you are doing it. Okay, we have something we call variable, and variables are like a container for storing values. Let's say I have a software that has hundreds of pages, and in that software I want to use the number 5 across the hundreds of pages. Now if that number changes from 5 to 6, I'll have to go to those hundreds of pages and check and change those number 5 to 6, and it is going to subject me to errors in case I forget something. I might forget to do something or change one value somewhere. We can use variables to make things better, to store values that can change at any time, so that when we change the value of that variable, then the value changes all through all the files or everything that mentions the name of that variable. When I said x is equal to 1, x is a variable that stores the value of 1. All of these variables have something we call a data type. Now x is equal to 1 means that the value 1 is stored in x, and every time I say print x, so we use the print statement like this to print. When I say print x like this, it is going to print out 1 to the screen here, because what I'm printing out is the value 1, but it is stored in x. If I say y is equal to 3 and I say print x plus y, it's going to add x and y to print out the value 4 for me. Now I don't need to come here to change what I'm adding, or let's come here again to say print x minus y, print x times y, print x divided by y. Now we have these 4 lines of code doing different operations. It gives us the different values. Let's say I want to change the value of y to 2. If I did not use a variable, I'll have to change every single line here to 2, but all I can do now is just change here to 2 and rerun, and all the values changes because I use a variable, and I can change the value of that variable, and it tails down to everywhere that the variable name is mentioned. Variable names are not just x or y or a or b. You can have descriptive names, like I say first name and I save the first name John, or we can have last name, or we can have full name that will now be a concatenation of first name and last name. When we say concatenation, we mean we're adding 2 strings together. We want to print them as one. I want to print the full name as one, first name plus. We can use the plus sign. We use this empty quotes to leave a space between them. If not, it will print all at once. Now we have seen how we declare variables, so you can store values. Now values can have different data type. If it's a number, it is not quoted. If it is a string of characters or even a single character that is not a number, it is quoted with either single or double quotes. We are going to look at what strings are next week. If it's a float, it has a decimal point. We'll look at the different data types that comes with Python. So let's focus on these variables. We have this variable, and we have different things we can do, operations that we can do on this variable using the different methods we have for both strings and for numbers, and it can also be a date and also date. We have something we call a format string. Let's say I want to print, I'll print full name. Now when I clear here and I run, I have the full name John Doe printed here. But sometimes you want to print something long, it is complicated, it is annoying to be doing this. We can come here to say, let's say full name is equal to, and we use the format string. Format string is written F, and then you put a quote, either single or double quotes. Once you do that, you use curly braces and write the name of the variable within the curly braces. So we have first name and then we have last name. This way, I don't have to be putting the quotes and the quotes and the space and the pluses. I just put an F, no space. Immediately after the F, you put a quote, and within the quote, you will specify curly braces and put the variables that you want to use. Now we can even leave sentences here to say the first name of the user is first name and the last name is last name. So once you want to specify the value of a variable, you put it within curly brace like this, and when we print full name and I run, I will have the whole sentence printed and spaced as we want it to be spaced. Okay, does anybody have any question? So let's talk about what a terminal is. Now your assignment 4 is going to have links, or has links to prerequisite videos that you need to watch to understand things about using the terminal. And why we use Visual Studio Code, regardless of whether you have a Mac or Windows, it is easy for us to run uniform code within the terminal. When we want to see what directory we are in, we can do pwd, which is the present working directory, and it tells you what your directory is. We want to do something like create a new folder in this directory. So we have these live classes. I have 3 folders. I want to create a new folder here. I can just write something like make directory mkdr, and I'll write the name. Let's say I want to make a directory called assignments. And when I look here now, I have a new assignments folder created. If I want to navigate into that directory, it is within the live classes and it is called assignments. I will do change directory cd assignments, the name of the file, and I am in that directory as indicated here. If I want to create a file within this assignments directory, there's no file here. I will just do you can use search, and let's say the name of the file is assignment1. So I'll create a new file called assignment1. And when I look at this assignment and I open it, I have a new file called assignment1. You can put an extension to say the type of file you're creating. So I put assignment1 without an extension. Okay, and so you have a new file. By default, this will be like a text file. So I have a new file there. So these are like basic commands that you run. If I want to clear the screen, I just run the clear command here, and it clears for me to type new stuff. So when you watch the links on your assignment 4 file, you will have a better understanding of your directory structure, and also of our repository Git and GitHub, because we are going to be using version control when we get to version part 3, and we need to understand how to build our CI/CD pipeline. All right, anyone has any questions? These are the agenda for week 8 lessons. I don't want to give you more content. I want to give you time to install all you need to install and understand the basics of Python before we go further next week to get our hands dirty. I'm coding examples of different things that we need to know. Anyone has questions? Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. But I just wanted to ask. That means, from what I've seen, when you write a line of code in Python, we don't need to use semicolon to close it. You just left it.
Yeah, you just leave it. So it's totally different from JavaScript that you did in course 1.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you interested in learning the Flask framework and learning how to use SQL Alchemy, it's part of what you'll do in part 3. The senior classes have that class at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Daytime. If you are interested, the link will be shared in your class, and you can join that class at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That will be 6:30 p.m. for Ghana and Liberia. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. for those in Nigeria. It's going to be 8:30 p.m. for those in Zambia and Zimbabwe, and it's going to be 9:30 p.m. for those in East Africa. All right. So see you in the next class later on. If you are going to join that class, it's going to be interesting, and it will get you thinking about what you're going to see in a few weeks to come. All right. Thank you, everyone, and see you later on next week.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.